right, we're going to get started. Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. Welcome to our College Financial Aid Night. Whether you're here in person or joining us via our live stream, we're thrilled to have you here tonight as we embark on this important journey together. My name is April Yubich, and I'm the Administrator for School Counseling. Tonight's program is going to last about an hour. Additionally, a video recording of tonight's presentation will be posted to the district's YouTube channel shortly thereafter this evening's presentation concludes. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Interim Superintendent Mealy, the Board of Education, and Principal Pat Keevens for giving us the opportunity to meet here tonight so we can support our students and our families. Additionally, I'd like to thank our counseling department for all their hard work and support on behalf of our students. So we're all gathered here tonight with the shared goal of navigating the complex world of financial aid within the college process. Choosing to pursue higher education is a significant decision that comes with many responsibilities, and we understand that navigating the financial aspects of college can be very daunting. And that's why we're here tonight, to provide you with valuable information and insights to help you make informed decisions about funding your college education. Over the next hour, we'll explore the various avenues of financial aid: scholarships, grants, loans, and the free application for federal student aid, otherwise known as FAFSA. Our goal is to demystify the process and empower you with the knowledge and resources you need to make college more affordable. We understand that every family has different financial situations, it's all unique, and we hope that after tonight you leave here with a clearer understanding of all the opportunities that are available to you. Tonight, we're honored to have an expert here in the field of college financial aid, Mr. Dan Robinson, as our guest speaker for this evening's presentation. Mr. Robinson is a financial aid professional with over 37 years of experience in the student financial aid field. He is currently the campus director of financial aid at Pace University's Pleasantville campus, where he has been for the last 20 plus years. And prior to Pace, Mr. Robinson worked at Adelphi University and Iona University. After Mr. Robinson concludes his presentation, we will open the forum to our audience present for questions. So without further ado, let's dive into the world of financial aid, and I turn it over to Mr. Robinson.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Actually, back in the day, it was still Iona College when I was there. So. Thanks for coming out tonight. For everyone at home, thanks for tuning in. I know there's some competition tonight, and maybe doing you all a favor if I go along and you miss some of the jet game. That might be a good thing. So we're going to go over a bunch of topics tonight. All right, there we go. So as previously mentioned, we're going to talk about some of the common terms in financial aid: cost of attendance, student aid index, financial need, where the money comes from, the type of money that's available. We're going to go into the FAFSA pretty in depth, and then talk about some special and unusual circumstances. And throughout the presentation, you'll see some slides with the words new information for 26, 27. There are a few little changes coming up for next fall. I know this presentation is primarily geared towards high school seniors, but for the parents or the students in the room or at home that are freshmen, sophomores, juniors, it's important information. It's never too early to get a head start on things, and look forward to seeing you here in future years. So cost of attendance is the first terminology we like to talk about. When you look at the price of colleges these days, you see that sticker price of $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, sometimes even a little bit higher. But what you're really looking at is the cost of the tuition and fees, housing and food. For us old-timers, that used to be called room and board. So it's now housing and food. Those are your direct expenses. So when you get that bill from the college or university, that's what you're going to be charged for. The bottom portion of this, the books, the transportation, miscellaneous, etc., those are part of the overall cost of attendance. Those are estimated numbers that are factored in so parents and students can maximize the aid they receive and have a better idea of how much the overall picture of sending your child to college will cost. The next term is student aid index. This used to be a term, if anyone had children in college more than 3 years ago, the term called the expected family contribution. That has changed now after many years of asking for a change in terminology to the student aid index. And it's an index that's determined by filing the FAFSA form, which we spoke of, and I'll get into that in great depth in a few moments. Now, determining financial need as it factors into how much a student could receive in aid from a college, it's a simple math calculation. We look at the overall cost of attendance, the big scary number, minus the SAI, and that's how much demonstrated financial need a student has. And that's what schools will use to determine what aid can be awarded. Two categories, need-based aid and non-need-based aid. Again, depending on that formula, which bucket it falls into. Now, four main types of financial aid. The ones on the right, that's the good stuff. That's free money or gift aid. The ones on the left we call self-help aid. So when we speak of scholarships, most scholarships are not need-based. They're based primarily on academics, first off. So your high school transcripts, GPAs, if you take test scores, colleges and universities will use to determine if you're eligible for a merit-based scholarship on those terms. Other types of scholarships could be based on talent. Is your student a musician, an athlete, a dancer, a singer, artistic talent? Colleges may also offer scholarships based on that. So most of those awards are not based on need, but based on some sort of either academic talent or outside talent beyond the classroom. On the grants part, however, grants are usually need-based. They can come from multiple sources, which we'll see in a moment. This is more free money that schools or federal or state government may offer to you based on need. Some schools may call something a grant that may not be need-based, but for the most part, if you hear the word grant, it's looking at your financial need. Now, I'm going to get into work study, which is considered financial aid for different reasons, and loans in a moment when I talk about where the money's coming from, mainly the federal government. So the five main sources of financial aid are there. First one being the federal government. The federal Pell Grant is determined by filling out the form, the FAFSA. So once they determine your SAI, they'll also let you know, do you qualify for the federal Pell Grant, which is the main source of aid from the federal government. Most of the awards are need-based. All schools will require you to complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, and each of the awards have different requirements. So as I mentioned, the Pell Grant first, that is based on the calculation from the FAFSA. The school will give you two figures, an SAI, and if you're eligible for Pell, how much you're eligible for. The maximum award moving forward this year, as well for next year, is $7,395, and the minimum award, if eligible, is $740. And it's a sliding scale. As the SAI gets lower, the award will go up. Next is the FSEOG, or Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. It's a mouthful. Commonly, most schools call it SEOG. This is a pool of money that schools are given by the Department of Education to award to their neediest Pell Grant recipients. So if your child's not eligible for a Pell Grant, they will not get the SEOG award. But not all Pell recipients can get SEOG. Because the funds are limited, each school sets their own criteria to determine who is eligible. It usually involves having strong demonstrated need, high demonstrated need, and a lot of times there could be deadlines. This is why filing the FAFSA early is important. Next is kind of a tricky one, the TEACH grant. This is for students who are looking to become educators. They'll be in college, they'll major in education. And this is a $4,000 grant, but it has a stipulation tied into it. Students have to remain an education major, and upon graduating, they have to teach in a designated teaching shortage area at the time they graduate, and that could change from year to year. Usually it's not schools in the suburbs, it's usually inner city schools primarily. And if the student doesn't meet all the requirements, they have to pay that grant back to the federal government in the form of a loan. So that's why it's an optional program for colleges and universities to participate in. And many do not, even if they offer teaching as one of their majors, because they don't want to burden the students further with a loan when they could actually possibly offer them more of their own funds as opposed to giving them the TEACH grant. Now, federal work study, I brushed over that before. The reason federal work study is considered financial aid, if the student has demonstrated need after all other aid is awarded, and they have federal work study as part of their financial aid awards, this is money the student can earn while going to school, work around their classes, earn usually minimum wage, maybe a little bit more depending on the job. But 75% of the income they're earning is coming with federal government funds. Only 25% is coming from the school itself. So for us, your child is cheap labor. We're only paying them 25 cents on the dollar. But they're earning minimum wage or better. And it helps because the students can work. They work around their academic schedule. They don't necessarily have to worry about leaving campus, getting back on time. They learn basic work skills, which is also important. And come time of finals and midterms, They're not expected to be in the offices working, they're expected to be studying and preparing for their tests. So that's the benefit of the work-study program as well. Now finally, the federal student loans. We've heard a lot about loans over the years. For the students, the first year, the maximum loan amount is $5,500, which is broken down into two parts, being unsubsidized and subsidized. If there's demonstrated financial need after all the free money is awarded, the student can get up to $3,500 in a subsidized loan, meaning while they're in school and a 6-month grace period after graduating, they're not paying any part of that loan back and no interest is accruing. So basically it's an interest-free loan for 4.5 years. Could be longer if the child goes on to graduate school. If there's no need or partial need, the student will get the rest of that $5,500 in the unsubsidized loan. Again, it doesn't have to be paid back until the child graduates or after 6 months after they graduate, but interest does start accruing as soon as that loan is dispersed. So we always recommend to families, if you can start paying interest while the student's in school, it's the best bet if you need to use that loan. Finally, the Federal Direct Plus program. PLUS is an acronym for Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students. This is a simple credit-based loan the parent can take out to help assist paying for your child's education. They don't look at your credit score, they don't look at your debt, they don't look at your income, they don't look to see if you're employed. All they look at is, are you paying your bills on time and you have no major red flags such as bankruptcies or charge-offs. If that's the case, the parent gets approved for the loan and helps pay for the education. Now, the loan itself is the most advantageous because the current interest rate on the loan, give this right here, is 9.08% with a 4.25% origination fee. So many families can do better outside of the parent loan program, but those families who have questionable credit, where the score may not be great, they may not qualify for anything on the outside, it is a good last resort loan for those families. And this is going to be, there'll be some changes with the loan coming up, and I'll show that in a moment. Now with the Pell Grant, there's a couple minor changes coming forward. The big one is students who may not want to go to college, traditional college, so to speak, they might want to go into like a job-focused program. There's going to be more Pell eligibility than there has been in the past. So this is actually a very good thing for students going to the trades, where they may need to go to a trade school for 6 months, but they couldn't get a Pell Grant previously. Now they might be able to if they have the demonstrated need. It's also going to limit Pell Grant for some high-income families. There were some situations over the past couple of years where a student had a very high SAI, yet they still got the minimum Pell Grant. Because the way the calculation worked, it seemed that they were still eligible for something. But going forward, if the student's SAI is twice the amount of the maximum Pell, so roughly $14,800, the student could not qualify for a Pell Grant. It's not going to affect too many families. Now, the big change with the parent loan is anyone in the room who's taken a parent loan out in the past, the way it works now is if you could borrow up to that overall cost of attendance minus any other financial aid, that's the maximum you could borrow. At some of the private colleges and universities, that figure could be as high as $40,000 or $50,000, even higher. That's changing. Starting July 1st next year, the maximum amount a parent could take out on a student's behalf is $20,000 per year, with a 4-year max of $65,000. That math doesn't really work out if the child's going to be in college for 4 years, but that's where it is right now. There is still some negotiation going on. Everything should finalize on November 1st, but this is what's expected to be in place for next year. Now, those parents who are in the room who have children currently in college possibly, and you've taken out a parent loan, the new rules do not apply. There will be a legacy or grandfathering in for anyone who currently has a parent loan. You can continue borrowing as you have for 3 more years or until the student graduates. I'm going to skip over the state portion, so I have this whole section at the end where I talk about the New York State aid and the application process and what's available. Next source of financial aid are the colleges themselves, especially private colleges and universities. We offer a lot of funds mainly in scholarships as well as grants. So some help is also some self-help aid. Colleges have their own work-study programs. Some of them have their own loan programs. Not too many of them, but some of them still have some of their own loan programs. School will use the FAFSA as well as possibly the CSS profile and possibly their own application as well. When I worked at Iona College over 20 years ago, they had their own separate form. I'm not sure if they still do, in addition to the FAFSA. So it's possible the student may have to fill up to 2, 3, or 4 financial aid forms for college. Every college does have deadlines, so you want to make sure you're meeting them. When you're talking with colleges, Now's the time to ask about deadlines for filing financial forms. Now, on the outside, this is where you can do a little homework now, although you may not be able to apply for the aid right now. The private sources of funds are readily available. We bring in millions of dollars in outside scholarships every year because students find them on their own, whether it's through searches that are on some of the handouts tonight, the FastWeb type, scholarships.net, whether it's through religious civic organizations. Here within the school, you'll be able to file for scholarships, correct? Probably starting in January, February, they'll open up where you can apply for scholarships. My daughter, when she graduated from high school a few years ago, she filled out scholarships for 3 or 4 different ones. She got like a $500 scholarship from our high school. So you never know. It takes a couple minutes to fill out. Take the time. Students, watch your email notification. Make sure you fill out those scholarships because if the money, no one applies for it, the money just sits there and doesn't get spent. So you want to make sure you do that. Start researching the outside scholarships now. For anyone, again, parents of students who are not seniors, start looking into it. So this time next year, you'll be prepared. But most of these scholarships start opening up usually right around the beginning of the new year. So that's really what you're looking at. Final source of financial aid we look for is the employers. If the student is working at a large company or large local organizations like maybe a ShopRite, CVS, or Walgreens, they may have some sort of scholarship fund for the student if they continue to work while they're in college. Have them ask. Parents, ask your employer, do you have any benefit for my child attending college? Especially if you're in a union. We're always filling out forms for union members, children that are coming to our school saying, okay, we have a scholarship to offer, please fill out this form, and they submit it to their union. Some students get it, some students don't. But anytime there's an employer-involved scholarship, a lot of times it may not be available for the first year. The student may first need to prove themselves as a valid applicant by completing 1 year of college or a semester of college showing that they're a good student. So having the good grades is part of it. So now we're going to turn to the federal portion of the process, which is the main portion. Everybody right now, regardless of what grade level you're in, can use the Federal Student Aid Estimator. Studentaid.gov is where everything is located for the federal government for student aid. So studentaid.gov estimator, it mimics the FAFSA where you can punch in some numbers and see what your estimated SAI will be. So if, parents that are here tonight, you can be doing your FAFSA, there's really no need to do this. But parents of non-seniors, you can go in, play with the numbers, see what you're expecting to happen next year. So just ask financial information from your 2024 taxes, assets, etc., but I'll be going over all that. Finally, get into the actual FAFSA. Free application for federal student aid. The first word being free. You do not have to pay for this. You should not be paying anyone to do this for you. The form has been simplified where it can be done by student and parent in less than 15 minutes. So it's not very difficult. It's not as scary as it used to be. It's actually a very simple form. It seems like a lot of them are going over, but when you actually sit down and do it, you'll be surprised at how quickly you get through it. So basically, it collects demographic and financial information for students and contributing parents. Again, as I mentioned, it calculates the SAI. It's available in multiple languages, and it's all done online. So normally I'd say the FAFSA will be available come Wednesday, October 1st. However, by some sort of miracle, it actually opened up fully to everybody last Thursday. So if you want to go home tonight and don't want to watch the Jets lose, you can do the FAFSA. So you're going to need some information to do this. Like I said, you don't need your tax returns necessarily, but have your 2024 tax returns on hand when you're filling it out. First thing you need to do for anyone who does not yet have an FSA ID. This is the logon for all things on studentaid.gov. Every student needs their own FSA ID, and each parent needs their own FSA ID. You need a valid email address and mobile number to get your ID. You cannot have shared emails or mobile numbers. For students, do not use your high school email address. If you don't have something on the outside, create a Gmail, Yahoo, whatever it might be, for the purpose of filing your FAFSA. They said this year you don't have to do it ahead of time, but again, I'm old school. If you're going to file your FAFSA, say on Wednesday night, go home tonight, create your FSA ID. So make sure the government can confirm your identity in the next 24 to 48 hours. For the parents in the room who have already done a FAFSA, either for yourself or for another child, you have an FSA ID. You do not need to create a new one. You may need to, reset your password, but when you log in, it gives you that option, you forgot password, and it walks you through the steps. Every time you log in, you will have to have your phone handy, you'll get the text code to pop in like pretty much everything these days, the multiple authentication. But again, every student needs their own, and every parent needs their own. So, getting to the FAFSA. This is what it'll look like when you're filing the FAFSA. You want to make sure, though, again, right now, you can file two different FAFSAs. You can file one for the current academic year, but that's not what you want. You want to file the 2026-27 FAFSA. So you would click on that one, it'll bring you to the next page, it'll ask whether you're the student or the parent. You'll be logging in with your FSA ID. It should know who you are, but you choose which one it is. It's always recommended the student does the FAFSA first. The parent can do it, but it's always recommended the student does their portion first. It'll offer you a series of 4 videos to go through on filling out the FAFSA. If you want to go through them, please do, but most of the information on there is what I'm going to be providing for you tonight. But again, if you want to look at those videos, by all means, they are very helpful. The reason the FAFSA is so simple and why it takes so little bit of time is this. It's the direct data exchange, or the DDX. What this does, this allows you have to give consent for the federal government, to the Department of Education, to pull your tax information directly from the IRS and populate the FAFSA for you. If you don't consent, the FAFSA doesn't get done. So it's kind of like you have to do it, and there's no real choice. But it pulls in only the data that's required. So there's no incorrect data, there's no missing data, there's nothing that you're going to make a mistake on. So it's all done for you. And again, once you consent, it'll take about 3 or 4 seconds. You'll see the spinning. Congratulations, it's been transferred. So the student, what do they have to fill out on the FAFSA? Pretty much their identity and contact information will be there already. It does have a gender question, which is optional. And it has, I think, one other question that's optional for students. Then they do their consent. Now, you're thinking, well, my child never worked, they didn't file taxes, why do they have to consent to have the information transferred from the IRS? What will transfer is this person filing their FAFSA didn't file taxes, and that's fine. That's what has to be populated on the FAFSA, and that's how it will come across. That's not an issue. It'll ask the student's marital status. I imagine most students coming out of high school that will be single. It'll ask their college plans. Believe it or not, this is a question many students get incorrect because they're thinking, oh, I'm graduating high school, I'm a graduate student. No, you're not. The answer is going to be first time, never attended college, is what the student's going to select for that. And then it's going to talk about personal and unusual circumstances. And this relates to the student's dependency status. So these are the questions that FAFSA asks the student about their dependency status. If they answer yes to any of them, they're no longer considered dependent upon their parents. It's not going to ask the date of the birth, because that's already provided. They already asked about the marriage. But if a student's in a graduate program, which they won't be, active duty or a veteran, if they have children or legal dependents of their own, we do see that occasionally. The bottom 3 are the ones that we do see situations for where if the student is an orphan or ward of the court, so you may have someone that you're caring for that's not your own child, based on a court order, either that they're a ward of the court, that they're in legal guardianship, where you're providing the support, you're not considered the parent, you don't have to complete the FAFSA, the student's considered independent. If the student was homeless at any time in the last 3 years, they'd also be considered independent. So hopefully none of you have this situation, but if you do, it'll be a little different, where there'll be no parental information, only student information. And that's what's considered part of the unusual circumstances. The other part of the unusual circumstances doesn't relate to those questions. It's more of, can the student not obtain their parents' information for the FAFSA, for whatever reason, where there's no orphan, they're not an orphan, they're not under legal guardianship. They just, for whatever reason, do not live with their parents anymore. There may be there may be police documents for protection, there may be other reasons that need to be proven. If both parents are deceased, unfortunately, they may not have filed papers, but it could be a situation like that. Is the parents incarcerated? Situations that can't be explained on the FAFSA that will need to be explained to the school. So if the student answers yes to unusual circumstances, that each school the student applies to is going to follow up saying, we need documented proof of what the circumstance is. So just be prepared if that is the situation. Then it's going to go over some demographic information, citizenship status of the student. All students to file a FAFSA must either be a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, meaning they have a green card with an A number, which would need to be provided on the FAFSA. The government does the double check with the Department of Homeland Security to make sure that that A number is valid. It's going to ask for just statistical purposes the highest level of education of the student's parents, if the student knows that. The government likes to collect and determine how many first-time college students or first-generation college students are attending each year. And some schools also use that information. They may have special programs designed for first-generation college students. Now, the parent killed in the line of duty. This is one example where the federal government aid does not look at need. If the student lost a parent in the line of duty from the Iraq War moving forward, the student could receive a full Pell Grant regardless of income. So even if the surviving parent is a millionaire, that student lost a parent in conflict, they'll receive a full Pell Grant. And then it's going to ask the high school information. Type in the city the high school is located in. It may list more than just Mahopac High School. It may list a couple others. Just make sure the student chooses the correct one. And correct graduation information as well. Because that's a question we've seen that's gotten missed over the last couple of years, is that the students leave that question blank. Even though they're not graduated by the time they file the FAFSA, they're going to choose that they have a high school diploma. Now again, student tax information, if they file taxes, it'll all be moved over automatically, and it'll ask a couple questions about assets, which I'll cover in detail in the parent section. But if there are no assets for the student, they put in a 0, do not leave it blank. Now the fun part for students. They get to select what colleges they want to receive the FAFSA. They can list up to 20 colleges on the FAFSA. If they're still looking at more than 20 colleges, you owe your counseling staff a big favor because there's a lot of work for them. There's a lot of work for you as well, a lot of payments for more than 20 colleges. But if it is more than 20, the student chooses the first 20. Make sure the FAFSA gets processed. You get confirmation of that. Then have to go back in, take some off, and add more on. So it's a time-consuming process doing that. But if it's under 20, not an issue. Now, once the student completes their portion, a parent or parents have to complete their portion. So the student has to invite the parents to complete the FAFSA. So they put an email address in for the parent that's going to start the process. That upon completion, the parent will get an email. The student then will be able to review all the information they put in and do an electronic signature. Once that's done, they'll get the congratulations and so on and so forth. Now, the student will the government will then send a link to the parent saying, your child has completed their FAFSA, it is now your turn to complete your portion of the FAFSA. In the past, the student had to enter the parent's date of birth, social security number. That's no longer needed, it's just a simple email address. The parent would get the link along with a 6-digit number they'll have to use to log in. So the parent would then log in to studentaid.gov with their FSA ID, they'll put in their 6-digit code, and start completing their portion of the FAFSA. So, which parents need to file the FAFSA? If the parents, there's a couple situations. So if student lives with both parents and they file taxes, married filing jointly, one parent is considered a contributor on the FAFSA. That's all that's needed. Student lives with both parents, but they file taxes as married filing separately. Then both parents need to be contributors on the FAFSA and need to complete it. So there can be 3 contributors on the FAFSA. Now, if the student lives with only one parent who's no longer married and not remarried, that's the only other contributor. If the parents are separated, divorced, whatever it might be, only one parent is considered the contributor unless that parent is remarried. Then their new spouse's information is also needed. Again, if they filed jointly with their new spouse, then again, it's just the one parent, but if they filed separately, it would be 3. So the FAFSA has at least 2 contributors, the student and the parent, which that parent could be for one for 2, or just single, or 3 parents if there are multiple taxes filed. It's all based on the parent's tax filing status and how many contributors there are. Same information is going to be verified: identity, consent for the FTI, marital status of the parent. This is where you put down whatever the marital status is, and the state of residence. Now, being the parent that's filing the FAFSA, is it possibly that parent may not live in New York State, because the contributing parent, if the parents are separated, is the parent that provides more financial support. So student lives here in Mahopac with parent A, who doesn't really work, but gets a large check every month from parent B, who lives in New Jersey. Well, parent B is technically supporting that child, not parent A. So that's why you can see a difference in state residency for the parent as opposed to the student. A couple different questions for the parents. They're going to ask if they received any of the federal means tested programs, SNAP, WIC, etc. They just ask yes or no. They don't ask how much. They don't ask for how long. It's just in the past 2 years, did you receive it, yes or no? Tax filing status. Again, this determines how many parents need to complete the FAFSA. It's going to ask the family size and number in college. This is one of the figures you can change is family size. It's going to pull in the information directly from your tax return, the number of exemptions on your tax return. That's going to be your family size. But that might not be your true family size, and that's the next slide. Then it's going to ask tax return information. Most of it's going to get pulled over from the, like I said, the DDX. One item that is not is if you have a rollover from an IRA or a pension on your 2024 tax return, it does not pick up the rollover. It'll pick up that you took a withdrawal, that it was untaxed, so that hurts you in a big way with the FAFSA, but if it was a rollover, it kind of backs it out, but it's unable to pick that up in that process. So you have to manually enter it, and it prompts you for that. Do you have a rollover? Yes, you put the dollar amount in. If you forget to do that, you cannot go back and make that correction. That correction will only be made by a school official. So once your child completes their FAFSA, a school has to go in and make that change on your behalf. So if you do have a rollover, so take out your 2024 tax returns, I think it's like lines 14, 15, or 16, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you see there's a word rollover there, you want to make sure that gets reported. And then assets. This is taken directly from the FAFSA. When you get to the question, you can click on the link, what is an asset? And that's exactly what I have here. So assets are considered money you have in your cash, savings, and checking. It says that the day you file the FAFSA, my interpretation is after you pay your monthly bills, okay? I'm getting a paycheck tomorrow, it's the 30th of the month. If I file my FAFSA tomorrow, my checking account's gonna look good, but on the first of the month, my mortgage gets taken out. So it's not gonna look too good. So what's normally in there after you pay your bills every month, and it cannot be a negative number, but it can be zero. If you have a business with more than 100 employees, the value of the business. If you own a farm with more than 100 employees, same thing, you have to report the value of it. If you own real estate other than the home you live in, so the house you have here in town, you don't report that. The house you have up in the mountains, you report the value of that minus any debt you have on it. Stocks, bonds, certificates of deposits, etc. If you have a 529 plan for the student that's filling out the FAFSA, it gets reported as an asset for the parent, not the student. Get a sip of water. So 529s, it's only for the student that's filed in the FAFSA, and it gets reported as a parental asset. What you don't report, as I mentioned before, your primary residence. So where you live is not reported. The value of your retirement plan, 401k, 403b, life insurance, etc., that is not reported on the FAFSA. That's one of the biggest mistakes that we see out there is that parents report that as an asset and it makes their SAI really high. Don't report that. So you could have a 401k worth $2 million. That's for your retirement. It's not for your child's education. You choose to tap into it, that's up to you. But it's not reported on the FAFSA. You also don't report any farms or businesses with less than 100 employees. And again, as retirement plans, pension funds, annuities, IRAs, KIOs, etc. None of those are reported. But you want to make sure any of the asset questions, if you don't have any, you don't have any funds in that, make sure you put in a zero. So I mentioned family size before. It looks at the number of exemptions. But if there's someone in your household you support, whether it's an adult child who's out of college and moved back in with you, whether it's your parents, whether it's one of your siblings that you're taking care of while they're trying to get themselves back together, you don't claim them on your taxes, but if you're supporting them, you could change that figure. It's going to automatically populate saying your household size is 4. Is this correct? Yes, it moves along. If not, you can change that number. Don't change it down, only change it up. I don't worry about the independent students because the student won't be independent. You'll get your balloon saying, congratulations, everything's completed, please review and sign. And the FAFSA is done. At that point, the student will get information regarding how to look at the the results, etc. Don't worry about the independent part. I keep wanting to remove this slide because it doesn't really pertain to anything. So the student will get to the FAFSA submission summary, where they can look at all their answers, they can look at the schools they listed, they can look at the next steps to say, okay, this is correct, or if I need to go back and make corrections. You could print this, you could save it as a PDF, which is what I recommend, but it's on what's called the Student Aid Dashboard. Every time the student logs into Student Aid, they will see this information and it's available to them. Everything for the FAFSA is the student's FAFSA. Although your information may be on it as a parent, it's all on the student's record, not the parent's record. Upon you completing the FAFSA, you'll get notification that it's been completed. When the government does their final processing of it, which is 24 to 48 hours, you'll get an email saying, your student's FAFSA has now been processed, have them go to their dashboard to review it. And the student will get the email saying it's been processed as well. As you can see, the FAFSA has some straightforward information. There's really no room to explain anything. You're not submitting anything other than the form electronically. So I spoke about unusual circumstances before, which was about the student's dependency status. Special circumstances is explaining what's gone on in your life since you filed your 2024 taxes that cannot be explained. Hopefully nothing, hopefully you're still employed, everything's going just the same, no changes needed. But if there is a circumstance that needs to be explained, that's between you and each school your child applies to. Between the student and yourself and each school the child applies to. But one school says, yes, we can take that into consideration, please submit the following documents. Another school might say, sorry, we're going to go on with what you provided and we're not going to move forward with that. And that's within each school's right. They don't have to pursue a special circumstance review. Now, these are the most common ones that we see. Pretty much every school will work with families if a parent passes away. That's a given. That's automatic. And usually if there's loss of employment since the 2024 tax returns. Reduction in employment is tricky. Some schools will look at that. Some schools won't. Some schools will consider a parent who voluntarily retired. Some schools say you chose to retire. We're not going to make it, any updates for that. We're not going to be able to pursue it any further. So again, little things like that. If you have medical expenses, pretty much above 11% of your federal adjusted gross income, which is the same thing the government uses in order to itemize your deductions, you would need to provide an explanation of those costs, and schools are going to ask for documentation. Documentation, and then more documentation. If you submit, okay, I have all these benefits, here's my tax return, shows it. Here's my explanation of benefits. That's not enough. Schools will need to see what you actually paid. So, copies of paid bills, credit card statements, checks, whatever it might be, however you paid them, schools will need to see that in order to make adjustments. If we're going to be altering the FAFSA on your behalf, which is a federal document, we need an audit trail. So we get audited, and if we don't have the documentation, we get cited. So, it's not that we want to be, pains to you, but we unfortunately have to get all the documentation we need. Same kind of goes in a divorce-separated situation. If there's an actual divorce, there's a court document. That's pretty simple. But in a situation if the parents separate since the time they filed their taxes jointly, we need to see proof of separate residence, separate utility bills, paychecks with different addresses on them. Parents in the past have tried pulling one over on financial aid offices. Happens every year. My favorite example is from about 3 or 4 years ago. We had a family in California. It's always California and Florida, we know that. Where parents are separated. Their SAI was somewhere in like the 90,000 range, not getting any financial need. So they said, okay, student, mom supports the parent. So, okay, provide documentation. Mom sends in a paycheck, wasn't all that much, where they live. Dad sends in his paycheck, and he sends in his proof of residency of the vineyard that he owned. That was his residence. It was also his employment address. So we kind of figured out they were just trying to get one over on us. They weren't separated. Also, if the separation is that we're separated, but we're still living in the same house, you're not separated for financial aid purposes. One of the marital statuses on the FAFSA is unmarried to living together, and that's where that falls into play. Even if you file taxes separately, you're living in separate parts of the house, technically but still need both parents' information on the FAFSA. Finally, if there's other members in college, other students in college, some schools will look at that. Usually not too many unless you have like triplets going at the same time, then maybe, or twins. Some schools will look at that. And if you have a child in a private education outside of the public schools, more of the private schools will take that into consideration. So, but anytime we make a change, we're going to ask for documentation and more documentation. So we got to make sure we're doing everything correctly. So, shift gears a little bit to New York State. If you're a resident of New York State for at least 1 year, student and parent, they may qualify for aid from the New York State government, most of it being based on need. They have a separate form to fill out, which is not automatically populated. This form will take you longer than the FAFSA. So to do all financial aid forms, I recommend families give yourselves an hour. If you only need to do the FAFSA, you said you'll be done in about 15, 20 minutes. If you need to do the state form and the next form I'm going to talk about, the profile, you'll need a little more time. You'll need your 2024 New York State tax return on hand. As long as the child is going to a college in New York and you live in New York, they may qualify for the state programs. The biggest one being TAP. When I went to college, however many decades ago that might have been, I got a TAP award. It's been around a long time. So the main requirement is the student must first file their FAFSA, and then they complete the TAP form. It's for undergraduate students only, so if any parents are thinking about going back for your master's degree, you can't get TAP. The maximum award is $5,665. The minimum award is $1,000, and it's a sliding scale. The lower the income, the higher the award. The student decides, you know, I don't want to start school full-time, I'm just going to go part-time for a couple semesters, they may still qualify for TAP. So the money is there. If the New York State parents or the family's New York State net taxable income is less than $125,000, the student will qualify for a New York State award. Again, anything really over $70,000, $80,000, it's going to be that $1,000. Once it gets below that $70,000 range, then it might go up a little bit at a time before you get to $56,65. That's the biggest program in New York. The next three biggest programs, most heralded one in the state is the Excelsior Scholarship. This is where if the family makes less than $125,000, the student can attend a SUNY or CUNY school, CUNY being the City University of New York, tuition free. Only tuition, not fees, not housing, not food, strictly tuition. There's a catch to it in a second, I'll get to that, for all three of these. So again, it's free tuition at a SUNY or CUNY school up to 4 years if they meet the income requirement. That's it. For private schools, however, there's something called the Enhanced Tuition Award, which schools opt to participate in, and less have. Last count, I think, was under 20% of the private colleges and universities opted into this program. It's similar in processing as the Excelsior Scholarship. However, there's a $6,000 maximum per academic year, and that includes the TAP award. So if you're getting a TAP award of $4,000, you cannot get more than $2,000 in the Excelsior. So that kind of is much more limited. Again, a lot of schools realized the amount of aid they were seeing from this program, it cost them more to administer the program than actually fund it. So schools decided this isn't worth our while. Finally, the New York State STEM. This is the one program that is not need-based. This is strictly academic. It's for students looking to major in one of the STEM majors, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, in a CUNY or SUNY school. And if they finish in the top 10% of the class, I'm not sure if you rank here, but if not, they have other means of determining that. If they meet the criteria, the student gets free tuition at a SUNY or CUNY school. So again, just tuition, not fees, not housing, not food. Now with all of these, there's kind of a stipulation. STEM, there's a two-level academic. They have to remain full-time, complete 30 credits per semester. Actually, that's for all of them. They have to be 30 credits per semester, per year, not semester, that'd be crazy. 30 credits per academic year, so that's roughly 5 classes a semester, in order to qualify in subsequent years. STEM has an academic component. I believe they need a 3.0 or higher as well. So that's while the student's in school. Now on the back end, in order for the student to not have to pay this back, they have to live and work in New York State upon graduating for the same number of years they received these awards. So they got free tuition for 4 years up at SUNY Plattsburgh. Great. They got a job offer in Burlington, Vermont. I'm taking that job offer. They're now paying back 4 years of tuition to New York State because they're not living in New York. So it could mean that after 4 years of college, your child's coming back home to live with you for 4 more years. So think of that. But again, it's free tuition. If you qualify for it, it's great. But again, just think on the back end, they have to live and work in New York State. Now, the CSS profile, it's the final form I'm going to speak to tonight. This is an additional form that's used by more of the highly selective colleges that have spent a lot of their own money, their endowed funds, so to speak, where they want to see a full financial picture. It costs $25 to file the form, and if each additional school you add is an additional $10. If you qualify for free lunch, you may have a waiver involved, you don't have to pay. But it collects detailed information. You'll have to enter all that information from your tax returns into the profile. It's going to ask the value of your home. It's going to ask how much you owe on your home. It's going to ask the value of the cars you drive and how much you owe on them. If you're divorced or separated, it'll ask the income and information for the non-custodial parent. FAFSA doesn't do that. This looks at a complete picture of what the student can afford. Again, most schools that require it, if you go to the College Board website, they have a section there for the CSS profile. It lists all the colleges that require the profile. There are also some schools that don't require it, but accept it. That's when you want to ask that school, what if I don't fill it out? What does that disqualify my child from receiving an aid? So that's a question you would need to ask. Strict deadlines as well. This opens up on Wednesday. There's no early opening up. The New York State form opens up on Wednesday as well on October 1st. So you want to make sure you get that done as quickly as possible. If you're going to be attending any of the schools' open houses coming up, stop by the financial aid table, ask what are your deadlines. You want to make sure you don't miss them. We've had too many stories where students applied late and they lost out on significant money because they didn't meet the deadline, regardless of the reason. So we want to make sure that's done there. Once all this is done, once the profile's done, the FAFSA is done, TAP is done, you'll get a financial aid award notice from the school. It'll state how much the student's receiving in the merit scholarship, in the state aid, federal aid, any grants the student's getting, student loans. It'll all be listed on there. The state aid will be an estimate, because New York State doesn't determine their final awards until April after the budget passes. So it'll be an estimated award, and it's usually pretty close. So you take all that information and you have to decide, okay, my child applied to 7 or 8 different schools. How do I know what it's really going to cost me at each school? So this is why I recommend, if you haven't done so already, or something, if you're familiar with using like an Excel spreadsheet, or if you want to handwrite it, whatever's easier, you want to write down the direct cost for each school, the tuition, the fees, the housing, and the food, what you're going to pay. Then you're going to write down how much gift aid, the free money. Let's do the simple math. Okay, it's costing me, direct cost is $60,000, I'm getting $42,000 in aid. It's costing me $18,000 before any loans. And just do that for each school. So it's easier to compare than say, okay, if it's really between schools A and B, your child likes both of them evenly, now it's a financial decision, which one works best for the family. But don't make your final decision just on finances. Again, you want to make sure that the student's going to be successful. Sometimes it may cost you a little more in the long run. I'm living that right now, I know. As a parent of a college student, you really want to make sure the student has the proper fit as well as everything else. Other question we normally get is, can I appeal for more money? The answer is yes, but yes, sort of. If the situation has truly changed, it's one of those special circumstances, by all means, you want to write a letter to the school. Do not send pages and pages of documentation. Explain your situation to the school, and they'll say, if we're going to pursue this, we'll tell you what to submit. Don't start sending tax returns. We've gotten families who send 10 years of tax returns to us, like you're sending your social security number in multiple different ways. That's not secure, it's not advised. Wait till we tell you that we can go forward with this special circumstance appeal and what documents you need to send. So send that letter to the school. Some schools usually have funds set aside for appeals where, this year we know we need more students in our mathematics program. So if you get an appeal from a student that's a math major, you know what? You can afford to give them an extra $500 or $1,000. My daughter went away to college. I wrote an appeal. They got us an extra $500. Did it make a big difference when the school was $65,000, but hey, every little bit helps. So it doesn't hurt to write the appeal, but do it early. As soon as you get that financial aid award notice, send the appeal in soon thereafter. Check the colleges. Some of them have forms that you can fill out, make it easier on you. It always looks best for a basic, simple appeal to come from the student. Because again, this is the student's information. You can help the student write it, but if it looks like it comes from the student, it's better. Now, if it's a family situation where the student's not fully aware, obviously the parent's going to write the letter. That's not a problem. But but you want to make sure the student's involved. So that is all the information. It's a lot in 45, 50 minutes. We have time for some questions. So if you have any, please raise your hand. Start right here in the front.
Concerning twins.
Yes.
So you said that they should fill out the FAFSA first before I do. So if there's two of them, am I going to get two invitations to fill it out?
Bless you. Yes. So the question for those at home is, if you have twins or even multiple children in college, each child needs their own FAFSA. So one child fills it out, you'll get the invitation. Second child fills out theirs, you'll get the invitation. You have to fill out your portion twice, because each form is individual to that student.
Will I have two numbers all at once?
No, parent only has one ID number. So the parent's FSA ID is good for all of your children, and it's good for yourself if you go back to college. But each child needs their own FSA ID. Yes?
If it's been 10 years since I filled out a FAFSA form, will I still have that same ID that I had 10 years ago?
Good question. Question regarding FSA ID. FSA ID is usually good for up to 20 years. So if you had one up within the last 20 years, it should still be good. You may not remember your password, or the password requirements might have changed. It'll probably require you to set up a new password. So when you go in, you log in. If you remember your password, put it in. If not, click forgot password, and they'll email you like any other website does when you forget your password, which I do often. Other questions? Yes?
If I am on like my mother's savings accounts and checking accounts, do I just count it as half?
So question regarding savings accounts that you're part of that may not be in your name. So any asset is any asset that is yours. So if you're on a parent's or a grandparent's savings account, checking account, any other asset, I would not report that, because it's not yours, it's your parents. That worst case scenario, they have the value, it's almost like having a power of attorney on it, so I look at it. So it's their asset, you're just on it because, because they're getting older, you want to do the right thing and have it in case anything happens. So any asset has to be in your name. If it's in someone else's name that you're a custodian on, so to speak, you don't report it. Yes? Questions regarding bank accounts versus 529 plans. 520, if it's anything in the student's name, the government weighs that more heavily in the asset section. Like pretty much the student has $3,000 in savings account. The government says 1,000 of that goes towards your education, so their SAI is automatically starting at 1,000. Where anything in the parent's name, it's somewhere between 2.5% and 6%, because they know any of the parent assets also have to go to pay for the household, retirement, etc. So if they have any money that's in the student's name, moving to a 529 is probably your best bet. But again, if I want to talk to any financial professional you deal with before that, I can help you with the financial aid end of things, but any other ramifications that come into play, that's something you can talk to, obviously, financial advisor, accountant, whatever it might be. But any asset, though, if it have the option being in the student versus the parent, it's better to be in the parent's name for financial aid purposes. Yes?
So the forms we should fill out immediately are the FAFSA, the CSS, and the TAP.
So you're correct. So first, want to make sure you get your FSA ID. The FAFSA can be filled out anytime you want right now, once you have your FSA ID. If your child's looking at a school in New York State, do the New York State form beginning October 1st, and determine if the colleges your child's looking at, if they require the profile, you can complete that as well as soon after October 1st as possible. I like to say, you have a 3-day weekend coming up in early October. That might be a good time to sit down, do it as, again, for the students in the room, you're going to have to spend some time with your parents on this. So you need to schedule some time where, you do it as a family. Now, if there's parts that your parents may not want your child to know, you can send them away for a couple minutes. But again, everything is in the student's name, so they have to be part of the process. But again, FAFSA first, always the FAFSA first, and then the New York State and CSS if needed. Any other questions?
I have one, I'm sorry.
Sure, that's okay.
Special circumstances, so I'm widowed, but it was several years ago. Does that still matter? Is that
So-
a special
would be a special circumstance. It really, it's anything that's changed since your 2024 tax return would be a special circumstance. So no other questions. Thank you all for coming out tonight. For those in-house, I'm not running right out the door, so if you had any questions, a little personal, I'll stick around for a few minutes. For those at home, thank you for attending, and there's a few last closing announcements.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. That was a lot, right?
Yes.
We will be sending this out to you guys in a communication, the recording of the event, the resources, if you didn't pick one up at the entranceway, we'll be sending those out electronically as well as tonight's presentation. So I'll be sending something out over the next day or two for that. Just as a reminder to our senior families, do please go to our senior site. We have a lot of information there, upcoming events, announcements, but also we have a whole page dedicated to financial aid for college, where it gives you information about the FAFSA, the CSS, the TAP, and all New York State scholarships and opportunities that are there, and information about the FAFSA and reminders as well. So please take time to look at that. Also Naviance, really important resource to look for scholarships. We post scholarships as they come up directly at Naviance, so take time to look at that with your student as well through their Naviance account. And of course, our school counseling department, your child's school counselor is here to help you every step of the way, so please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again to Mr. Robinson for being here. His knowledge, his expertise, and his guidance to our Mahopac community is just invaluable, so we thank you for coming back every year for us, and we really appreciate you being here. In addition to that, just want to do a shout out. Next week on Wednesday, October 8th, we have another great college programming evening for you, College Admissions Roundtable discussion. We have 4 college reps coming who will be here to discuss different aspects of the college application process in a roundtable discussion. So please come back and see us and attend that event next week. And I guess safe travels, and thanks for being here. And Mr. Robinson will be here just for a little while if you have any further questions. And if you didn't get a handout, please get one at the door. Thank you.